Hello everybody, this is Brandon Strains here. I know it's been a while since I posted a video of any kind on this channel due to me being busy with college and other stuff going on in my life. Today we will be rectifying that and doing a model train review on a locomotive that is extremely special to me for personal reasons that I won't be going into. And that is the Athearn Genesis HO scale Great Northern GP-9. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are watching this video and are wondering, why HO scale? Aren't you still doing O scale, or are you switching scales? The reason why we have an HO scale locomotive here today is that even though I mainly do O scale, I have a small collection of HO scale locomotives and rolling stock on the side. I have the HO scale stuff as a side collection due to me being part of an HO scale model railroad club called the Evergreen Model Railroad Club in Spokane Valley, Washington. The club is a great place to go to and run trains while socializing with the other members, rather than just running trains always at home. Now, this doesn't mean I'm going to switch scales. Since I have collected O scale for a long time and I have trains that I love to run and that I enjoy, I will not be switching scales. Now that's taken care of, let's go back to the main subject. This is the very first HO scale review that I've ever done on my channel, and since I don't have a DCC system at home, I thought I would do the review at the club I go to. I really want to thank all the club members there for helping me make the filming of this video a lot easier, and my really good friend, Cowcatcher Studios, for letting me review this model while I'm still paying it off. Before we dive into this model, let's talk about the real GP-9 for a bit. The Electromotive Division GP-9 was a 4-axle diesel locomotive built by the Electromotive Division between 1954 and 1963. A total of 4,272 locomotives were built, along with 165 B units. This made the GP-9s the most mass-produced first-generation diesel locomotive in the world. They would consist of a 567C, 16-cylinder, turbocharged 1,750 horsepower engine that gave the locomotives a tractive effort of 64,750 pounds of force, which was very impressive for a locomotive of that size. Not only they were powerful for their size, but they're also extremely versatile, being used on almost every kind of rail service. You could see them hauling fast passenger trains, heavy freight trains, logging trains, switching operations. You will see these locomotives on any type of railroad operation. By the late 1970s, though, the railroad started retiring them for more modern motive power. Despite this, a good amount of them are still preserved at tourist railroads, museums, and parks. And even today, some of them are still being used on short line railroads, with some of them being 60 to 70 years old and they're still running. As for the Great Northern locomotive we see here, number 688 was part of a roster of 79 GP-9s that were built between 1954 and 1959. 688 here would be part of the 1957 batch of GP-9s and was delivered in April of that year. She would eventually be absorbed into BN by 1970 and was renumbered to 1761. She would eventually be traded into GE by 1985 after nearly 30 years of service. However, instead of scrapping her, the GE would sell the locomotive to the Ohio Central Railroad, which they renumbered it to 91 4 years later. The locomotive would be on the OHC's roster until 2000, when they decided to sell the locomotive to the PT Rail Services and was relettered and renumbered as JTPX 1703. Not much is known about what happened to the locomotive after that until I found a photo of the locomotive in storage somewhere between Dexter and Whitehall, Arkansas in 2024. No one knows who owns the locomotive right now, or even exactly where it is. To this day, we probably won't know what will become of the 68-year-old Jeep. Now that you know the history of the EMD GP-9, let's take a look at the Athearn Genesis version of this workhorse. Athearn would do this particular run of these GP-9s in 2023, and they got delivered in some time of 2024. They made a lot of different paint schemes to choose from, so there's a good chance you'll find one that you like. However, in this video, we're going to be specifically talking about the Great Northern renditions of this model. Athearn made 4 different row numbers of the Great Northern Jeep in the sky blue paint scheme. They made locomotives numbers 682, 683, 688, and 690. All of these engines are offered in 2 different variations. You can either get the DC silent version, or you can get the DCCN sound version with Tsunami 2. The locomotive we have here today is the DCCN sound-equipped version. Prices between the two vary. For the DC silent version, you're looking at a retail price of $219.99, and for the DCCN sound-equipped version, you're looking at a retail price of $319.99. However, besides those 2 different systems you can operate the locomotive on, all the details are identical. Athearn also did row number specific details for each locomotive. 688 and 690 have the dynamic brakes and have the bell mounted on the long hood, while locomotives 682 and 683 have the snow plows on both ends, are non-dynamic, and have the bell mounted on the center of the long hood. Despite these models having different road-specific details, they all still do have the winterization hatch with the horn mounted on top, long hood forward operation, a nail-style antenna on top of the cab, and the Great Northern style fuel tank skirts. When you get your locomotive, it will be packaged in a gorgeous blue and gold box. On the end of the box shows what locomotive you're getting and what version you have. Opening up the box, you will see a layer of foam protecting the block of ice that is keeping the locomotive secure. On the side of the box, you get a little detail packet consisting of deck plates that you can replace with the static ones that are already on the model, and some additional details you can put on the engine. Want to mention, I really like the packaging design of this. I have a couple of Bowser RS3s, and they're packaged way different than this locomotive. When it comes to the RS3s, they are attached to a plastic base with 2 pieces of foam on either side. Even though it does reduce costs on packaging, you need an extra tool in order to get those locomotives out, and it's a pretty tedious process just to get the locomotives out of their packaging. Once the block of ice is out of the foam box, carefully slide the plastic sleeve off of the block of ice, open up the tab of one side of the plastic tray, and then carefully lift the locomotive out of the packaging. Now that the locomotive is out of its box, let's take a closer up look at the details. Here is a look up at the front of the locomotive. We have some nice steps on either side of the pilot that has safety tread on them. Above that, we have some separately applied air hose detailing and a KD coupler in the middle. When you get this engine, it will originally come with plastic ones that don't look the greatest. Plus, the couplers did break on this engine after my friend used it for a little bit. To fix this issue, he put on some metal KD couplers, and that solved that issue. So I would recommend when you get this engine, replace the couplers on it. Then above that, we have a deck plate that can be removed with a movable one that is separately packaged with the engine. In the middle, we have some separately applied handrails that look really nice. And above them on the hood, we have a lot of tiny separately applied grab irons. Also on the hood, we have a molded-in handbrake. Above that, we have an operational headlight with number boards on either side. We have 2 painted marker lights on either side. And then there is a separately applied bell on top. On the sides of the engine, we have some nice molded-in door detailing and vent detailing on the long hood of the locomotive. There are 2 separately applied plastic handrails that go on the full length of the engine. And in the middle, we have a separately applied Great Northern sign. Then, on the far left-hand side, we see an F painted on the long hood to signify that this engine is equipped to run long nose forward. Below the running board, we have the skirting that goes over part of the die-cast metal fuel tank, and on the left-hand side of the metal fuel tank, we have some air tanks that are separately applied with some separately applied piping going off of them. If we look at the trucks, we see a lot of molded in and separately applied details, like the air cylinders and the roller bearing caps. And what I found really cool about this is that if you look very closely on either end of the truck, there is separately applied sand pipes where they put the sand on the rails. I think this is a really cool touch that you don't normally see on O-scale engines. Here, if we have a look on the back of the engine, it looks pretty much the same as the front, but we do have some slight differences in detail. And here is the other side of the locomotive, which again looks pretty much the same as the right-hand side, but we do have the fully enclosed windows on this side because this is when they ran the engines long nose forward. They had the enclosed windows on one side of the engine for the cruise. Finally, if you look on top of the engine, we have some separately applied etched metal fans. We also have a separately applied winterization hatch with a separately applied brass horn on top. We have the two exhaust pipes that are on either side on one of the fans. And then on the rear of the short hood, we have the nail style antenna. I thought it was on the cab, but after looking at it closer, it was apparently on the rear hood. All right, now that we've looked at the details, let's go ahead and put it on the club layout and start it up. Before I start this engine up, I do want to mention I will not be going over all 28 different functions of this engine due to time constraints, and I have not yet quite mastered doing all 28 different functions. So in a separate video, I'll be showing you guys all the different functions this locomotive has. Also in that video, I'll be showing you guys all the horns and bell options you get with the Tsunami 2 decoder. There is a ton of different bell options you can choose from, but the horn I chose for this engine is the Leslie RS3K, which is what the GP-9s had in service. And I chose a standard EMD steel bell for this engine since that's what these GP-9s had in service as well. All right, let's go ahead and start her up.
getting there, you know. I'm good. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I can see this becoming one of my favorite engines really easy. Yes, I can see that.
All right, that wraps it up for this review. This is a fantastic engine all around. Great sounds, great features. It looks great and it sounds great. That's something I normally don't say about a model, but in this case, this is one of those exceptions. I really have to thank my really good friend for allowing me to review this engine while I'm still paying it off him. Now, in terms of finding these, you can still find some of these engines at your HO scale dealers. Train World is a good example. I found the sound equipped versions there for $200, which is a really good deal. So if you're a fan of the Great Northern and if you're a fan of first generation diesels, I recommend picking one of these up. Well, that's it for now. This is Brendan Strains, and I'll see you in the next video.